The transport ship landed on Station Primus with a loud hiss. Steam rose from its metal body as the doors slowly opened. Inside stood the newest group of military recruits from across the galaxy. They came from different planets, different species, and different worlds. But they all had one thing in common. They wanted to become soldiers of the Galactic Alliance. Park. Do-hyun stepped off the ship and looked around. He was a human from Earth, from a small country called Korea. He was not very tall. He was not very big. His body was lean and his face was calm. He carried only one bag on his back. It was old and worn, with patches sewn into the fabric. It weighed about 12 kilograms. Around him, other recruits carried massive amounts of equipment. The Vrakthi warriors were the most impressive. They stood over 7 feet tall with 4 arms and thick scales covering their bodies. Each one carried metal cases filled with weapons, armor, and survival gear. Their packs weighed over 80 kilograms. The Delphori came from ocean planets. They needed special suits filled with water to breathe. Their equipment was complex and heavy. Tubes and tanks covered their bodies. They moved slowly under the weight. Even the small cricks, insect-like creatures with 6 legs, pulled floating pods behind them. These pods contained everything they needed to survive in different environments. Then there was Do-hyun with his small bag. He walked quietly toward the orientation hall. Other recruits stared at him as he passed. Some whispered to each other. A group of young Vrakthi pointed at his bag and laughed. Do-hyun did not react. He kept walking. Inside the hall, hundreds of recruits gathered. The ceiling was high and the walls were made of dark metal. Lights floated in the air, casting a cold glow over everyone. At the front of the hall stood a raised platform where the instructors waited. The chief instructor was a Vrakthi named Gorvax. He was older than the others, with scars across his face and one eye that glowed with a mechanical replacement. His forearms were thick with muscle. When he spoke, his voice boomed through the hall like thunder. "Welcome to the Galactic Alliance Military Academy," Gorvax said. "You have been chosen from billions of candidates. You represent the best of your species. Here, you will learn to fight. You will learn to survive. You will learn to serve the Alliance." He paused and looked across the crowd. His mechanical eye scanned the recruits one by one. "Some of you will fail," he continued. "Some of you will quit, and some of you will die. This is the truth. Accept it now or leave." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Gorvax nodded with satisfaction. Then his eye stopped on something. His mandibles clicked together, making a sound like stones hitting each other. He stepped down from the platform and walked into the crowd. The recruits moved aside as he approached. He walked straight toward Do-hyun. "What is this?" Gorvax asked. He stood directly in front of the human, looking down at him. Do-hyun looked up without fear. "Corporal Park Do-hyun, sir, Earth, Korean Peninsula." "I know what you are, human." Gorvax reached down and grabbed Do-hyun's bag with one claw. He lifted it easily, like it weighed nothing. "I am asking about this." "What is this?" "My survival kit, sir." Gorvax shook the bag. It made a soft sound. This is your survival kit?" He turned to the other recruits and held up the bag for everyone to see. "Look at this." The human has brought a child's school bag to military training. Laughter spread through the hall. The Vrakthi cadets laughed the loudest. Even some of the other species smiled nervously. "Where is your thermal regulation unit?" Gorvax demanded. "Where is your atmospheric processor? Where is your defensive array? Where is your emergency beacon system?" "Inside the bag, sir," Do-hyun answered calmly. "Inside?" Gorvax squeezed the bag. "My breakfast weighs more than this. Are you telling me that everything you need to survive is inside this tiny bag?" "Yes, sir." Gorvax dropped the bag on the ground. It landed with a soft thump. Humans, he said loudly, always arriving unprepared, always expecting the galaxy to take care of them. He leaned down until his face was close to Doyun's. Your species is weak. You have no armor. You have no claws. You have no venom. You cannot survive extreme heat or extreme cold. You cannot breathe in different atmospheres. You are soft and fragile. Dohyun said nothing. The only reason humans are in the alliance is politics, Korvax continued. Your planet has resources we need, so we accept your people into our military. But do not think for one moment that you belong here. He straightened up and walked back toward the platform. Let this be a lesson to all of you. Proper equipment saves lives. If you come unprepared, you will die. It is that simple. From across the hall, another human watched the scene. Her name was Kim Sujin. She was also from Korea, a female soldier with sharp eyes and quick hands. Her bag was similar to Doyun's, maybe slightly heavier. Sujin knew who Doyun was. She had read his file before arriving. He had survived 7 combat missions on hostile planets. He had completed the Earth Special Forces training, one of the hardest programs in human military history. He had once walked for 6 days across a frozen mountain range with nothing but a knife and a water bottle. The instructor had no idea who he was insulting. Sujin watched as Doyun quietly picked up his bag and put it back on his shoulders. His face showed no anger. His hands did not shake. He simply stood there, waiting for the orientation to continue. Around him, other recruits whispered and laughed. They called him light bag and tourist. They made jokes about how long he would survive. Sujin smiled to herself. She had seen this before. Humans were always underestimated. Their bodies were weak compared to other species. Their technology was not as advanced. They lived short lives on a single planet, but there was something about humans that the galaxy did not understand. Something that could not be measured by weight or technology. She looked at Doyun standing alone in the crowd of giants. Soon, she thought, they would all learn. The orientation continued for several more hours. Korvax explained the training schedule, the rules, and the expectations. He spoke about honor and duty and sacrifice. But every few minutes, he would look at Dohyun and shake his head. When the orientation finally ended, the recruits were sent to their quarters. Dohyun walked alone through the long metal hallways. His footsteps echoed softly. Behind him, a group of Rakthi cadets followed. They were laughing and pushing each other. One of them called out, "Hey, human, need help carrying your heavy bag?" More laughter. Dohyun did not turn around. He did not respond. He simply kept walking, his light bag on his shoulders and his mind already planning for what was to come. He knew what the others thought of him. He knew they saw weakness. They were wrong. 1 week passed at the academy. The recruits trained every day. They learned combat techniques. They studied alien languages. They practiced with weapons. But the real test was coming. On the 7th day, Korvax gathered all the recruits in the main hall. His mechanical eye glowed red as he spoke. "Tomorrow begins your first field exercise," he announced. "You will be transported to Kethris 4, a volcanic moon. You will march for 72 hours across its surface. You will carry everything you need to survive." He pressed a button and a hologram appeared in the air. It showed a dark world covered in black rocks and rivers of fire. Steam rose from cracks in the ground. The sky was orange and red. Kethris 4 is one of the most dangerous environments in this sector, Korvax continued. During the day, temperatures reach 60 degrees. At night, they drop to -40. The atmosphere is thin and filled with acid. If you breathe it for too long without protection, your lungs will burn. The recruits looked at each other nervously. Even the large Vrakthi seemed uncomfortable. "Your equipment will determine your survival," Korvac said. "Those who carry proper gear will complete the march. Those who do not will be eliminated." He paused and looked directly at Do-hyun. "Or they will die." The Vrakthi cadets laughed again. They had been laughing at Do-hyun all week. Korvac smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Perhaps our human friend would like to withdraw now. There is no shame in admitting that your species is not suited for this challenge." Everyone turned to look at Do-hyun. He stood in the back of the crowd, his light bag at his feet. "I will complete the march, Instructor," Do-hyun said simply. Korvac shook his head. "Your confidence is admirable, human. But confidence does not stop you from freezing to death." The next morning, the recruits boarded transport ships. Do-hyun sat in the corner of the ship, checking his bag one final time. He had packed carefully. Every item had a purpose. Every gram of weight was considered. Inside his bag was a thin shelter made of reflective material. It weighed only 200 grams, but could keep him warm in extreme cold. He had a small device that recycled water from the air. He had tubes of nutrient paste that provided calories without weight. He had a multi-tool with 20 different functions. He had thin ropes made of super strong material. He had a basic medical kit. And he had layers of special clothing that could adjust to different temperatures. Sujin sat down next to him. Her bag was similar. "They think we are going to die," she said quietly. Do-hyun nodded. "Let them think. The Vrakthi are carrying over 80 kilograms each. Their thermal suits alone weigh 20 kilograms. Heavy equipment needs power," Do-hyun replied. "Power runs out." Sujin smiled. "You have done this before, many times." Do-hyun closed his bag and put it on his shoulders. "On Earth, I once crossed the Gobi Desert with a bag lighter than this one." The transport ship landed on Kethris 4 with a hard bump. The doors opened and hot air rushed inside. It smelled like burning metal and rotten eggs. The recruits stepped onto the surface. The ground was black and cracked. In the distance, a volcano sent smoke into the orange sky. The sun was huge and red, hanging low on the horizon. Korvac stood at the front of the group. He wore a full combat suit with environmental controls. "The march begins now," he shouted. "Follow the marked path. Reach the extraction point in 72 hours. Anyone who falls behind will be left behind. Move out." The recruits started walking. For the first few hours, everyone moved well. The Vrakthi marched in formation, their heavy boots crushing the black rocks beneath them. The Delphori moved slowly in their water suits, but they kept up. The small Kricks scurried across the ground, carrying their survival pods. Do-hyun and Sujin walked together near the back. They moved at a steady pace, not too fast and not too slow. They saved their energy dot. After 6 hours, problems began. The first to struggle were the Vrakthi. Their heavy thermal suits were designed to protect them from extreme temperatures. But the suits needed power to work. And carrying 80 kilograms across rough ground used a lot of energy. One by one, the Vrakthi started to slow down. Their breathing became heavy. Sweat dripped from their scales. Their thermal suits could not cool them fast enough during movement. "My power cell is draining too fast," one Vrakthi cadet said, checking his equipment. "At this rate, I will run out before nightfall." More Vrakthi reported the same problem. Their advanced equipment was failing under the strain. Then the Delphori had trouble. Their environmental suits, designed to keep them wet in dry air, began to crack under the temperature changes. 2 Delphori cadets started leaking water from their suits. They had to be evacuated by emergency transport. Korvac watched with growing concern. This was not supposed to happen. His best soldiers, with the best equipment, were failing. Meanwhile, Do-hyun kept walking. He adjusted his clothing as the temperature changed. When it was hot, he removed outer layers. When the wind blew, he added them back. His small water recycler hummed quietly, giving him clean water from the acid in the air. Sujin walked beside him, doing the same. "The others are watching us now," she said quietly. Do-hyun nodded. "They are beginning to understand." By nightfall, the temperature dropped rapidly. The recruits stopped to make camp. The Vrakthi set up their heavy shelters, which required power to heat. The Devfori huddled together, their suits working hard to maintain temperature. Do-hyun found a large rock that blocked the wind. He pulled out his thin reflective shelter and set it up in less than 2 minutes. Inside, he wrapped himself in his layered clothing. The reflective material bounced his body heat back toward him. It was not comfortable, but it was enough. Several Vrakthi cadets walked past and looked at his tiny shelter. "How can you survive in that?" one of them asked. His voice was curious now, not mocking. "I do not need to be comfortable," Do-hyun replied. "I only need to survive." The night passed slowly. The cold was brutal. Several more recruits gave up and activated their emergency beacons. They were evacuated. Their training ended. By morning, only 2/3 of the original group remained. The march continued. Day 2 was worse than Day 1. The ground became steeper. The air became thinner. More equipment failed. More recruits dropped out. But Do-hyun and Sujin kept walking. They ate small amounts of nutrient paste every few hours. They drank recycled water. They rested for short periods and then kept moving. Other recruits began to watch them differently now. The laughter had stopped. The jokes had stopped. Instead, there was curiosity. There was confusion. How were the humans with the light bags still going when soldiers with 10 times the equipment had failed? Even Gorvax noticed. He walked near Do-hyun for a while, studying him with his mechanical eye. "You should not be surviving this," the instructor said. Do-hyun did not stop walking. "Yet I am. How?" "You have no thermal suit, no environmental controls, no advanced technology." Do-hyun looked at the instructor. For the first time, he spoke more than a few words. "Technology is a tool," he said. "It helps when it works. But when it fails, you need something else. You need knowledge. You need experience. You need the ability to adapt." He pointed at the struggling Vrakthi ahead of them. They depend on their equipment. When the equipment fails, they fail. I depend on myself. I cannot fail because I am still alive. Gorvax said nothing. He fell back and let Do-hyun continue alone. By the end of Day 2, only half the recruits remained. The extraction point was still 1 day away, and the hardest part was yet to come. That night, Sujin sat next to Do-hyun in his small shelter. They shared body heat, a simple human technique that required no technology. "They are learning," Sujin said. Do-hyun looked out at the cold, dark moon. "Not yet," he replied. "But they will." Day 3 began with fire. The ground shook without warning. A deep rumble came from beneath the surface. Then, in the distance, the earth split open. Yellow and orange flames shot up into the sky. A massive sulfur vent had erupted, sending clouds of poisonous gas across the path. The recruits stopped walking. The planned route was blocked. There was no way through. Gorvax checked his equipment. His communicator made static sounds. "The atmospheric interference is too strong," he announced. "Emergency beacons are not working. We cannot contact the station." Fear spread through the group. There were about 40 recruits left, representing 12 different species. They stood on a volcanic moon with no communication, no clear path, and a storm of poison coming toward them. "What do we do?" a Vrakthi cadet asked. His voice was shaking. Gorvax looked at his command unit. It flickered and died. The temperature changes and acid in the air had damaged the electronics. For the first time, the powerful instructor looked unsure. "We wait," Gorvax said. "Rescue will come eventually. We stay here and wait." Don stepped forward. "No," he said. His voice was calm but firm. Everyone turned to look at him. The human with the light bag was speaking against the chief instructor. "What did you say?" Gorvax growled. "We cannot wait here," Doyen explained. He pointed at the sky. The clouds were getting darker. The wind was getting stronger. "A storm is coming. Look at the atmospheric pressure. Look at the wind patterns. In a few hours, this area will be covered in acid rain and volcanic ash." Gorvax's mechanical eyes scanned the sky. He knew the human was right, but he did not want to admit it. "Then where do you suggest we go?" the instructor demanded. Doyen pointed toward the canyon walls to their left. There were dark openings in the rock, about 200 meters up. "Lava tubes," he said. "Natural caves formed by old volcanic activity. The rock walls will protect us from the storm. The cave will keep us warm at night." "Those caves could collapse," Gorvax argued. "They could be filled with toxic gas. They could be unstable." "Then we test them first," Doyen replied. He was already taking off his bag. "We sent a small team to check the caves. If they are safe, we move everyone inside. If they are not safe, we find another option." Gorvax stared at the human. This small, weak creature was giving orders. And worse, his orders made sense. A small Krix cadet named Tika stepped forward. Her compound eyes reflected the orange sky. "My sensors are still working," she said. "I can detect toxic gas. I will go with the human." 2 more recruits volunteered. A young Vrakthi named Barak, whose equipment had mostly failed, and a Delphori named Wellen, whose water suit was still functioning. "We will check the caves," Doyen said. "The rest of you, prepare to move quickly. When we signal, follow us." He did not wait for Gorvax to approve. He started climbing toward the cave openings. Tika, Barak, and Wellen followed. The climb was difficult. The rock was sharp and unstable. Small pieces broke off and fell into the canyon below. Dohyun moved carefully, testing each handhold before putting his weight on it. His light bag did not slow him down. Barak struggled. His heavy body and remaining equipment made climbing hard. Twice, he almost fell. But Dohyun reached down and helped him, showing him where to put his feet. "You are strong for a human," Barak said, breathing heavily. "I am not strong," Dohyun replied. "I am experienced." They reached the first cave opening. Inside, it was dark and quiet. Tika used her sensors to check the air. "Oxygen levels are low but survivable," she reported. "No toxic gas." The cave goes deep into the rock. Dohan entered first. He pulled out a small light from his bag and looked around. The cave was large, maybe 50 meters deep and 20 meters wide. The ceiling was high. The walls were smooth from ancient lava flows. "This will work," he said. "We can fit everyone here." He returned to the entrance and waved his light in a pattern. Down below, the remaining recruits saw the signal. They began to climb. Sujin led the main group up the rock wall. She helped the weaker recruits, showing them the path that Dohyun had found. Some of the heavy equipment had to be left behind. There was no way to carry it up the steep climb. Gorvax climbed last. His thermal suit was dead now, just heavy metal on his body. He struggled with every step. But he kept going, refusing to give up. It took 2 hours to get everyone into the cave. By the time the last recruit arrived, the storm had started. Outside, acid rain fell from the sky. Volcanic ash filled the air. The wind howled like a dying animal. Inside the cave, the recruits huddled together. They were safe from the storm, but they were cold and tired. Many had lost their equipment. Some were injured from the climb. Do-hyun did not rest. He walked through the cave, checking on everyone. He used his paracord to create a warning line near unstable parts of the ceiling. He set up his reflective shelter at an angle to bounce heat from body warmth back toward the group. He showed others how to do the same with whatever materials they had. Sujin organized the remaining supplies. She counted food packets and water containers. It was not much, but it would be enough if they were careful. Everyone needs to share, she announced. Small portions every few hours. We do not know how long we will be here. Some of the Vrakthi grumbled. They were not used to taking orders from humans, but they were also cold, tired, and scared. They did what Sujin said. Tika helped Do-hyun create ventilation channels near the cave entrance. Without airflow, the carbon dioxide from 40 breathing creatures would build up and become dangerous. You think of everything, Tika said. Watching him work, I have learned from mistakes, Do-hyun replied. On Earth, we have been surviving in caves for 100,000 years. Our ancestors knew things that technology cannot teach. Gorvax sat against the cave wall, watching. His 4 arms were wrapped around his body for warmth. Without his equipment, he was just another cold creature in a dark hole. Do-hyun approached him. Instructor, you need to move closer to the others. Body heat is shared. Alone, you will get too cold. Gorvax looked up at the human. Just 2 days ago, he had mocked this creature. He had called humans weak and fragile. He had laughed at the light-bag dot now that saying human was saving his life. Why are you helping me? Gorvax asked quietly. I insulted you. I humiliated you in front of everyone. Do-hyun shrugged. You were wrong about me. That does not mean I want you to die. He reached out his hand. After a moment, Gorvax took it and let the human help him stand. Together, they walked to where the other recruits were gathered. The Vrakthi made space for their instructor. Slowly, body heat began to spread through the group. Outside, the storm raged. Lightning flashed across the orange sky. The ground shook from volcanic activity inside the cave. 40 recruits from 12 different species waited. They were alive because a human with a light bag had thought ahead. Because he had known what to do when everything failed. Sujin sat next to Do-hyun near the cave entrance. They took turns watching the storm. How long do you think? She asked. Do-hyun looked at the sky. The storm will last maybe 12 hours. Rescue will come after that. Another 6 hours, maybe more. Can we last that long? Do nodded. We can. We will. Sujin leaned back against the rock. They are different now, she said, looking at the other recruits. They look at you differently. Fear changes people, Do-hyun replied. When they realize their strength cannot save them, they start to see value in other things. He closed his eyes for a moment, resting but not sleeping. On Earth, humans survived ice ages with nothing but fire and animal skins. We survived deserts with nothing but knowledge of water. We survived everywhere because we had to. Because giving up was not possible. Sujin nodded. And now they are learning that lesson. The night passed slowly. The storm continued. But inside the cave, hope stayed alive. And in the center of it all stood a human with a light bag and the knowledge of 1,000 generations. The storm continued through the night. Thunder shook the cave walls. Lightning turned the darkness into brief moments of blinding light. Acid rain fell in sheets, burning everything it touched on the surface outside. Inside the cave, Do-hyun worked without rest. He moved through the group of recruits, checking on each one. A Delphori cadet named Wellen was losing water from a crack in his suit. Do-hyun used material from his own bag to seal the leak. It was not perfect, but it would hold. A young Krix cadet had injured her leg during the climb. Do-hyun cleaned the wound with supplies from his medical kit and wrapped it tightly. "Keep it elevated," he told her. "Do not put weight on it until we reach the station." Two Vrakthi cadets were showing signs of cold shock. Their bodies, designed for warmer climates, could not handle the temperature drop. Do-hyun organized other recruits to sit close to them, sharing body heat. He gave them small amounts of his nutrient paste to keep their energy up. Sujin helped him with everything. She knew how humans survived. She had the same training, the same knowledge. Together, they moved through the cave like doctors in a hospital, treating problems before they became deadly. Gorvax watched from his position against the wall. His mechanical eye tracked every movement Do-hyun made. After several hours, the instructor finally spoke. "Human," he called out. "Come here." Do-hyun walked over and sat down across from the large Vrakthi. Even sitting, Gorvax was taller than Do-hyun standing. But somehow, in this moment, they seemed equal. "I have been a soldier for 40 years, Gorvax said slowly. "I have fought in 12 wars. I have trained thousands of cadets. I have seen species from across the galaxy face the worst conditions imaginable." He paused, his mandibles clicking softly. "I have never seen anything like you." Do-hyun said nothing. He waited for the instructor to continue. "How do you do it?" Gorvax asked. "How do you survive with so little? Your species has no natural armor. No claws, no venom. You cannot regulate your body temperature like we can. You cannot see in the dark. You cannot breathe different atmospheres. By every measure, humans are one of the weakest intelligent species in the galaxy." It was not an insult this time. It was a genuine question. Do-hyun thought for a moment before answering. "On Earth, we have a saying. What does not kill you makes you stronger. Our planet tried to kill us for 200,000 years. Ice ages, deserts, floods, volcanoes, predators larger and faster and stronger than us. We survived all of it. But how?" Gorvax pressed. "Without technology, without natural advantages, how did you survive?" "We adapted," Do-hyun said simply. "When the world was cold, we learned to make fire. When food was scarce, we learned to hunt animals 10 times our size. When we could not outrun predators, we learned to outlast them. Human beings can run for days without stopping. Did you know that? We would chase animals until they collapsed from exhaustion. It is called persistence hunting." Gorvax's eye widened slightly. "You hunted by simply not stopping?" "Yes. Our bodies are designed for endurance, not speed. For survival, not comfort. We sweat to cool ourselves, which most species cannot do. We can survive on very little water and food for long periods. Our brains are built to solve problems, to find solutions when none seem possible." He gestured around the cave. "Everything I did here, I learned on Earth. How to find shelter. How to conserve energy. How to share warmth. How to ration food. These are old lessons, passed down through countless generations." Gorvax leaned back against the rock. "Your technology is not as advanced as ours. Your military is not as powerful. Your species has only been in space for a short time. We thought you were children playing in a world of adults." "I understand," Do-hyun said. "From the outside, humans look weak. But our weakness is what made us strong. Because we had no natural weapons, we learned to make them. Because we had no armor, we learned to avoid danger. Because we could not survive alone, we learned to work together." Tika, the Krix cadet, had been listening nearby. She scurried closer, her compound eyes bright with interest. Humans colonized every part of their planet before they had advanced technology, she said. "I studied this at my academy. Mountains, deserts, frozen lands, tiny islands in the middle of oceans. Everywhere. No other species has done this." "The Vrakthi need warm climates," Barak added. He was sitting nearby, his scales pale from the cold. We cannot live in too many places on our own world. Humans live everywhere on theirs. Dawn nodded. Earth is a hard planet. It has every kind of environment. Burning deserts, frozen tundras, deep jungles, high mountains. Our ancestors spread across all of it because staying in one place meant death. We had to keep moving, keep adapting, keep learning. And you carry that knowledge with you, Gorvax said slowly. In your minds, not in your equipment. Equipment fails, Do-Yoon replied. Knowledge does not. Skills do not. Experience does not. My bag is light because I do not need heavy things. I have what I need here. He tapped his head. And here. He placed his hand over his heart. The cave was quiet for a long moment. The storm outside continued, but inside, something had changed. The way the other recruits looked at Do-Yoon was different now. Not with pity or mockery, but with something closer to respect. Sujin spoke up from across the cave. On Earth, there is another saying. Travel light, travel far. The more you carry, the more can break. The more can fail. The more weight slows you down. She looked at the piles of abandoned equipment near the cave entrance. Heavy thermal suits. Broken atmospheric processors. Dead power cells. Your equipment is excellent, she said to Gorvax. Why it works. When conditions are perfect. But the galaxy is never perfect. Conditions are never ideal. At some point, everything fails. The question is, what do you do then? Gorvax looked at his own dead equipment. Hours ago, it had been worth more than a small spacecraft. Now it was just dead weight. Useless metal. I was wrong, he said finally. The words came out slowly, like they were heavy. I looked at your size and saw weakness. I looked at your bags and saw foolishness. I did not see what was actually there. What do you see now? Do-Yoon asked. Gorvax's mandibles clicked in a pattern that Do-Yoon had learned meant respect among the Vrakti. I see survivors. I see a species that has been underestimated by every powerful civilization in the galaxy. I see why the Alliance wanted humans despite our objections. He stood up slowly, his forearms pushing against the rock. I see warriors. Not warriors of strength or technology. Warriors of will. Warriors who refuse to die. The other recruits in the cave were listening now. They had heard everything. Barok, the young Vrakthi who had struggled on the climb, stood up as well. When we return to the station, I want to learn. I want to learn how humans survive. I want to learn your methods. Tika clicked her agreement. My species relies too much on our technology. Perhaps we have forgotten old ways. Perhaps we never learned them at all. One by one, other recruits spoke up. They wanted to understand. They wanted to learn. Do-Yoon looked at Sujin. She smiled slightly. Humans are teachers now? She whispered. Humans have always been teachers, Do-Yoon replied. We just needed students ready to listen. Outside, the storm began to fade. The thunder became quieter. The lightning less frequent. Dawn was coming, bringing light to the volcanic moon dot, and inside the cave, 40 recruits from 12 species waited together. They had entered the cave as strangers, many of them enemies. They would leave as something different, something stronger. The rescue ships arrived 18 hours after the storm ended. When the pilots landed on Kethris 4, they expected to find bodies. They expected to find failure. A volcanic eruption, a massive storm, failed equipment, and broken communications. Every sign pointed to disaster. Instead, they found 40 recruits walking out of a cave, tired but alive. The medical teams rushed forward, checking each recruit for injuries. They found some wounds, some cases of cold exposure, some dehydration. But everyone was alive. Everyone had survived. It was the first time in the Academy's history that a crisis event of this level had no deaths. The recruits were transported back to Station Primus. News of their survival spread quickly through the station, then through the sector, then through the entire Alliance. 40 recruits, 12 species, 0 deaths. Led by a human with a light bag, the official report was 300 pages long. It described every decision, every action, every moment of the 72-hour ordeal. Gorvax wrote most of it himself. He did not hide his mistakes. He did not minimize the role of the humans. The report concluded with a simple statement. Our current training methods and equipment standards may require significant revision. The human approach to survival deserves serious study. The report became required reading at every Alliance military academy. Do-Yun and Sujin received official commendations from the Alliance High Command. They were the first humans to receive such honors. The ceremony was small, but representatives from dozens of species attended. Even the Vrakthi High Council sent a message of congratulation. But the commendations were not the important change. The important change happened slowly, over weeks and months, in the daily life of the Academy. Gorvax redesigned the entire survival training program. He reduced equipment weight requirements by 40%. He added new courses on improvisation, adaptation, and low-technology survival. He invited human instructors to teach classes on what he called adaptive minimalism. The first human instructor was Sujin. She taught a class called Survival Without Technology. On the first day, she walked into a room full of species that could crush her with one hand. Put down your equipment, she said. All of it. Today, you learn to survive with nothing. The students hesitated. Some were scared. Some were confused. But they did it. By the end of the course, every student could build shelter from natural materials. They could find water in seemingly dry environments. They could create fire without technology. They could navigate using stars and natural landmarks. Most importantly, they could think differently. They could adapt. Du Haiyan became a guest instructor for advanced survival courses. He took small groups of cadets on training missions with minimal equipment. He taught them what he had learned over years of service on Earth and beyond. Equipment is a luxury, he would tell them. Knowledge is a necessity. When you understand this, you will never truly be helpless. The cadets who trained with him became some of the best soldiers in the Alliance. They were known for their ability to complete missions when everything went wrong. When technology failed, when plans fell apart, when hope seemed lost, they were called light bags as a nickname. It was meant as an insult at first, but the meaning changed over time. It became a badge of honor. 1 year after the events on Kethris 4, Gorvax addressed a new cohort of recruits in the orientation hall. He stood on the same platform, under the same floating lights, with the same cold metal walls. But his words were different. You have come from across the galaxy, he said. You represent dozens of species, hundreds of worlds, thousands of years of military tradition. You believe you know what makes a soldier strong. He paused and looked across the crowd. I spent 30 years teaching soldiers to rely on superior technology. I believed that bigger weapons, heavier armor, and more advanced equipment meant better soldiers. I believed that physical weakness meant overall weakness. His mechanical eye found the humans in the crowd. There were more of them now. A dozen at least. I was wrong. The recruits shifted uncomfortably. Instructors were not supposed to admit mistakes. 1 year ago, on a volcanic moon called Kethris 4, I learned a lesson that changed everything I thought I knew. A human with a bag lighter than my lunch saved 40 lives, including mine. He did it without advanced technology, without superior strength, without any of the advantages we consider essential. Gorvax walked down from the platform and into the crowd. He stopped in front of a young human recruit. She was small, even by human standards. Her bag was worn and light. "What is your name, cadet?" he asked. "Recruit Lee Yuna, sir. Earth, Korean Peninsula." "And what is in your bag, Recruit Lee?" Yuna did not hesitate. "Everything I need to survive, sir." Gorvax's mandibles clicked in the pattern of respect. He turned back to face all the recruits. "The galaxy underestimates humans," he said loudly. "Other species see small bodies, short lifespans, no natural weapons. They see weakness." He walked back toward the platform, his forearms clasped behind his back. "They did not see what I saw in that cave. Humans do not survive despite their limitations. They survive because of what those limitations force them to become. Problem solvers, adapters, endurance. Hunters who once chased prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion." He reached the platform and turned to face the recruits one last time. "So when a human arrives with a light bag and a calm expression, do not laugh. Do not mock. Watch them. Learn from them. Because when everything fails, and everything eventually fails, that human will still be standing." In the back of the hall, Do-Hyun watched the ceremony. Sujin stood beside him. They were not here as recruits anymore. They were here as instructors, as examples, as proof of what humans could do. "Do you think they understand?" Sujin asked quietly. Do-Hyun watched the young recruits listening to Gorvax. He saw the confusion on some faces, the curiosity on others, the beginning of understanding on a few. "Some of them do," he replied. "Others will learn. That is how it always works." The orientation continued. The new recruits were assigned to their quarters. Training would begin tomorrow. As the hall emptied, Gorvax approached Do-Hyun and Sujin. "Thank you for coming," the instructor said. "Your presence means something to the new cadets." Do nodded. "We are happy to help." Gorvax hesitated, then spoke again. "I think about that night in the cave often. I think about how close we came to death. And I think about how a human I had insulted and mocked saved my life without hesitation." "You would have done the same," Do-Hyun said. "Would I?" Gorvax shook his head. "I am not sure. But I hope that I would. I hope that your example has taught me not just how to survive, but how to be better." He extended one of his forearms. Do-Hyun reached out and gripped it in the Vrakthi gesture of deep respect. "The galaxy is vast and old," Gorvax said. "It is full of powerful species who have been among the stars for thousands of years. But I believe now that humanity has something none of us truly understand." "What is that?" Do-Hyun asked. "The will to survive anything. The refusal to accept defeat. The ability to adapt when adaptation seems impossible." Gorvax released his grip and stepped back. "And you do it all while traveling light." Do-Hyun smiled slightly. It was rare for him to smile, but this moment deserved it. The galaxy was vast. It was ancient. It was full of species stronger, faster, and more advanced than humans. But humans had something else. Something that could not be measured or weighed. Something that lived in their blood and their bones and their minds. The will to survive. And they carried it in light bags, wherever they went.